Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. I'm Aiden, and now that the big, huge waves for the most part of 2026 NFL free agency have come and gone, just like last year, today I wanted to bring in Buffalo Bills beat writer Ryan Talbot to help me dissect and recap and really reflect on what has gone on with Brandon Beane and company with this team over the last month or so. Favorite things, not so favorite things, what's happened, what do we like, what do we not like. Ryan, I know this is a busy time of year for you as we gear down from free agency and gear up towards the draft. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule this time of year to chat some Bills free agency reflection with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Excited to be on here.
Yeah, so I want to give you, since you're the guest, the floor first. What is specifically your one favorite aspect slash thing slash deal moves that Brandon Beane has made this offseason up to this point? It can be a re-signing, signing, trade, whatever direction you want to go with it.
Yeah, I went with re-signing Connor McGovern. I didn't think that he was going to come back. I thought that the market for center was going to put him out of Buffalo's range. Obviously, Josh Allen intervened at some point and kind of talked to Beane, talked to McGovern. But as much as I love the DJ Moore trade, as much as I like CJ Gardner-Johnson, to me, making sure that you have 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen in the fold this year is huge for this team, because there was a very real possibility that we were only going to have, this team was only going to have 3 of them, with David Edwards going, as we know now, to New Orleans, but having a sizable market, and McGovern likely would have had a sizable market if you really would have tested it out there.
Yeah, we did not compare notes before, obviously, but I also went with re-signing center Connor McGovern. Specifically, we're looking at a 4-year, $52 million deal, and it comes back to this for me. That is $13 million per year. 1, I didn't think he would be back, and 2, all the projection sites and whatnot were projecting as much as 15, 16 per year. So that's an immediate value. But when you, for Brandon Beane and company, but when you compare it to someone like Tyler Linderbaum, who got 27 per year, literally blew the market out of the water, 27 per year from the Las Vegas Raiders, that's another extreme value from McGovern's standpoint. I'm not denying, is Tyler Linderbaum better than McGovern? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not arguing or denying that. But is he 14 million per year better? No, I think you've erred on the side of no. So in that context, I think Brandon Beane did a terrific job in valuing. Say what you will about early in the draft, say what you will about outside free agents. I have my own criticisms as well for Beane, but one thing that you cannot knock him for is he is very good about getting value on his own. He did all his extensions last year, and he's very good with re-signing his own players, and it just shows in another value with Connor McGovern.
Absolutely. Definitely on the same page there. I think that it's good to have someone that is going to kind of be the general of the offensive line, calling things with the new O-line coach. Obviously, with Aaron Cromer retiring, I think the offense is going to look a little bit different. I know Joe Brady is still calling this thing, but he's going to bring in some elements of what Pete Carmichael Jr. has done with his time with the Saints and the Broncos. I think you'll see an uptick in play action. You'll see an uptick in James Cook's receiving targets, stuff like that, where, it's going to be good to have the majority of that O-line back, but especially McGovern, because he's going to be calling a lot of this out.
For sure. Speaking of value with that, I want to shift over, if you would, to a move that I don't think people are talking about nearly enough right now. And I'm going to go right off the top with safety Geno Stone coming over on a 1-year, $1.4 million deal. Now, I know some people have suggested, since not even about half of that, not even $1 million of that is guaranteed, that he might not be a roster lock come August, September when those cuts roll around. I'm not saying he's a lock, but I still think he has a very good chance to make this roster. Mm-hmm. He is on paper, he's a very poor athlete. The athleticism score is way less than ideal, but he still has ball skills, and I know he relies on his instincts more than his athleticism for those said ball skills. So whether he's going to be a third safety with Jim Leonard, because you would assume the starters would be Cole Bishop and CJ Gardner-Johnson, right? So if you have a third safety, whether he's in that dime role, whether they play more 3 safety looks under Jim Leonard now and is more man blitz aggressive scheme, what have you. I really like Geno Stone coming over. Now, maybe you could say this is a bit of Derek Forrest from last year. Remember that? Everyone was kind of hyped up for a sneaky under the radar move, and then he doesn't play on the team all year. But I think Geno Stone has a very good, very, very good track record. He's also a very high-end special teamer from his first few years as a 7th-round pick, which he needed to be with the Baltimore Ravens. So, one, what's your read on Stone in terms of competing for a roster spot? Do you think he has a very good chance or not? And then two, what's a under the radar signing or re-signing that people are not talking about enough right now?
Yeah, so Geno Stone is a player I am very high on as well in terms of being that third safety, making this roster. I think chances are great. Obviously, like you said, Cole Bishop and CJ Gardner-Johnson to be your starting duo. Now, maybe the Bills end up drafting a safety high. There's some really good ones if one falls into their lap at pick 26 if they don't trade back.
Sure.
That's potential, the potential to that to happen is there. But then Geno kind of slides down a spot. I still think he has a decent shot of making this team. It all comes down to, what they're going to do with Jordan Hancock, how they're going to play him as well. If you add more to this room, I think that he's a lot safer than a guy like DeMar Hamlin, though, who also was brought back on a 1-year deal after they had already signed Geno Stone and CJ Gardner-Johnson. So I like that move. I think that's a solid move for this team. My under-the-radar move, though, was Lloyd Cushenberry III. And, he's not in play to start. He's not going to compete for the left guard job. That's going to be more so Austin Corbett and another signing I did really like, by the way, and Alec Anderson, and then maybe someone else that they bring in if, again, the right guy's there in the draft. But Lloyd Cushenberry very easily could have been this team's week 1 starter had Connor McGovern gone and signed somewhere else. They had eyes on him as potentially being brought in to compete for that job. And it's funny because a few weeks before free agency, we're all sitting there saying, hey, maybe they really like Cedric Van Pran Granger. Yes. He's there working out hard in the offseason. It's year 3, maybe trying to get something on his rookie deal, some actual play out of him. And now we're sitting here saying, is this guy even going to make the team? Because they bring back Connor McGovern. Cushenberry has 80 career starts. And I know it wasn't good in Tennessee, but some of his earlier tape, he looked pretty good at center in his career during his time at Denver. I think Tennessee was just kind of a lost cause in terms of the entire line. He's coming off of an injury, or he had an injury a few years back, where I think the Bills are going to get a really good value on him as a backup, but someone that can come right in, plug and play.
I totally agree with you. I was jostling in my head between Geno Stone and so behind the scenes here, I was on vacation in Florida during some of this over the last couple weeks or so. And when I first saw the Lloyd Cushenberry signing, I kind of perked up because that's a pretty damn good guy to have as a backup who has a ton of starting experience in this league.
Yeah, I mean, a former, day 2 pick. A lot of reps under his belt, a lot to like about his overall game, not an all pro or anything like that, but I believe as a rookie, he was on the PFWA rookie team. Has shown some really solid flashes of play in his career. So in terms of the depth signings, for as much criticism as Brandon Beane takes, I know one of our next questions is about where has he missed? He's always good about building up this offensive line with starters, with backups, having really good competitions throughout the summer to make sure that they have 10 or 11 really solid guys on this team.
Well, and not to mention, they've done this before with sneaky O-line trades. Yep. Everyone needs O-line. Cedric Van Pran Granger selected in the 5th round. So if you can get a couple years ago, if you can get a nice 5th or 6th round pick swap for that, I would be all for that, because unfortunately, I don't know where he fits on this team now with all these people brought in.
Right. And it might end up being that if you can get a 6th or even a 7th round pick for him, that could happen. We're not that far removed from Russell Bodine being brought in as a free agent 1 year and then getting traded to the Patriots at the end of the summer for a 7th round pick. So essentially you sign a guy for pennies on the dollar. He's not going to make the team, but you still get a 7th round pick out of it. They've invested a 5th round pick in Cedric Van Pran Granger, so it's not exactly the same situation. But could they get a pick for him? Yeah, I think that's entirely possible.
Cody, you can throw Cody Ford. It happened with Cody Ford a few years ago as well. So Brandon Beane likes, and people are always looking for O-line injury replacements early in the season and training camp especially. So
right.
Now we've been very positive to start out this discussion, but like I said, when it comes to outside free agents, off-season free agents, Brandon Bean in the past is kind of lacking, to put it truthfully. So, what is one area / aspect of this team where Brandon Bean has kind of dropped the ball and not been as aggressive as you would like position-wise so far up to this point?
Yeah, it's probably D line or linebacker in my opinion, and my answer for that's a little bit twofold. You know, we heard
Yeah.
from Joe Brady last week at the owners' meetings, and with Jim Leonard, we're all sitting here talking about a 3-4 defense. And Joe Brady was quick to say, listen, we're not going to live in a 3-4. There's going to be some 4-3. There's going to be different elements to this. So you can't just sit here and say, look at this roster from a 3-4 perspective, because they're going to be a hybrid type of defense. But the other part of me says, okay, they're probably going to play at least a quarter of their reps, I would think, out of a 3-4. I think Denver was at least like 25% last year, and those were actually around 20% at times. And I look at this roster from the 3-4 perspective, and I look at the D line, and you have guys like TJ Sanders, a second-round pick last year, doesn't have a lot of reps, a lot of film. Deion Walker being a little bit undersized for that nose tackle job, as great as he was last year at Oliver. And then on the linebacker position, you're talking Bradley Chubb and Greg Rousseau off the edge. You're talking Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams. But that's not necessarily a great front, in my opinion. So we sat here leading up to free agency, and there were probably 5 linebackers that Leonard had ties to, whether it was from his days at Wisconsin, whether it was his time in Denver, and none of them signed with the Bills.
They're all gone, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Leo Chanel, I mean, I was projecting from the minute Leonard was hired, he was going to be brought in, and it was an $8 million contract for a guy that's been a backup most of his career in KC, but showing some flashes as a pass rusher and things of that nature. But they might have just thought that was too much. They might really be high on Dorian Williams. They might sit there and say, hey, Terrell Bernard's injury with his ankle was as legit as it comes last year. But I still don't love that linebacker room. And I know there's going to be limited true linebacker reps when they're in that 3-4 look, because Rousseau and Chubb are playing linebacker in that front. But I still think they need more there. And then when you're talking about that defensive front, there's so much unknown and uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
Michael Hoyt, obviously, when he comes back, how are they going to use him? He's a hybrid type player. Landon Jackson, those another unproven guy. There's just a lot of mystery in terms of that front. So those are the 2 areas. And, I don't want to sit here and say that it's 100% on Brandon Bean this offseason. He's the one that pays the players these contracts. So he's the one that kind of put them in this situation. But they didn't have a ton of money to spend in free agency. Didn't necessarily upgrade these areas either.
Yeah, you touched on linebacker. I do personally zero in on linebacker here, specifically the lack of movement at linebacker. So there's 2 things here. One, I think they should move Terrell Bernard to weak side linebacker instead of middle linebacker, just because I think his skill set, his skill set pertains to that role, fits that role, if you would, even better than middle. And then number 2, I think they need to find a starting linebacker of the future, whether it's a veteran stopgap. You still have guys like, Shaq Thompson's still there. And then Bobby Okereke has the New York Giants linebacker coach ties thing. But right now, you have Dorian Williams. And I like, in theory, if Dorian Williams can be weaponized as a true blitzing package style linebacker in this new blitz aggressive defense under Jim Leonard. But in my opinion, he still has a lot to be desired in terms of coverage. His coverage ability is average at best. So I'm personally not in on him being a full-time starter because of that. So at pick 26, if a CJ Allen falls to you, I think that would fit perfectly. If you want to go 3rd round, maybe trade up a little bit. People have suggested as a spark plug Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. So I think those are some draft options. But I do think, forget starter, even depth. There hasn't been a single move here at linebacker.
Right.
Depth-wise, Terrell Bernard's his own thing. But you have Dorian Williams, who I just touched on, Joel Andreessen, and then you have a couple of at fast practice squad candidates and Keontae Jenkins and Jimmy Charlo. They're back in the mix. But starters, depth-wise, you just don't have much here. personally, I'm a fan of re-signing Shaq Thompson for one more year and then drafting a guy like CJ Allen. If he falls to number 26, attack it both ways.
Right. And Shaq Thompson recently on social media said he's trying to come back to the Bills. But I'm sure the financials are a little bit of a hang up. He is looking for, I don't want to say a payday, because he only started 6 games, played in 12. He was very effective when he was on the field, though. He diagnosed plays better than anyone else last season, in my opinion, in the second half of the year especially. He knew when screens were coming. He was blowing those plays up, made a big play in the Jacksonville playoff game with an interception. So I like him a lot, but you're not probably going to get, I don't know, even know if you can get $3 million on a deal at this point. I think it's more in the twos. Might be fair to him. He was signed to a vet minimum essentially deal to join the Bills last year. He said at the locker cleanout he was hoping to land somewhere where, the money was a little bit more money and a starting job. I don't know if the Bills can guarantee either of those things.
Probably.
The fact that he wants to come back is encouraging. You named some other Okereke that would be intriguing. But they definitely need to draft some. That's one position where they need to address the depth. There's another one when we get to our 3 biggest needs where they definitely need to address depth, and we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, I agree. Starters and depth. I think they need both at the linebacker position. It can't just be Terrell Bernard and then whatever else you have. So anyway, Ryan, looking at this roster from the top-down view, taking all positions into account, what is your most position group? What is your most improved position group rather after free agency at this point?
I could probably sit here and say O-line again, but I didn't go with that when I was coming up with the answers, although I love the depth. I love that they brought back McGovern. I went wide receiver. The addition of DJ Moore alone makes this wide receiver room that much better. I know that maybe the Bills overpaid. I'm not disagreeing with that second-round pick, but who knows who else was bidding and what forced their hand to do so. But from a player perspective, this is the best wide receiver Josh Allen has had since Stephon Diggs. It was many years ago, mind you, but we've seen his fit with Joe Brady, 1,100 yards in 2020. Brady obviously fired in 2021 in Carolina, but it wasn't until early December, and that was another 1,100-yard season in Carolina.
160 targets.
Yep. So, I still think there's going to be elements of everyone eats in this offense, but I also feel like DJ Moore is going to be the lion's share of the targets at receiver. It's going to make life easier for Khalil Shakir and even for, Joshua Palmer, who is the forgotten man in this offense, and rightfully so. I don't even know if this move is going to pan out, but now there's so much less pressure on Palmer, where I felt like when they signed him to that deal last year, you better end up being a quasi 1 or 2 for this offense, because they were paying him something about 12, 13 million on average when you looked at just the basic financials, and he played nothing like that. But now there's less pressure on him. Kincaid, we're sitting here in not even, early spring talking about how they're going to manage his reps. That worries me. But he is going to have a little less pressure on him. And when he's on the field, we know how good he is. They're going to have Cook involved in the passing game more. So it has a trickle-down effect, but I feel like DJ Moore's addition to the wide receiver room has improved that overall unit enough. I think there's definitely a pick in this draft. I don't necessarily think at 26, but I feel like they're going to at least add one more in the draft, probably in free agency, bring back Brandon Cooks. I would think after the draft would make a lot of sense. So things like that, and then let the best, 5 guys, 6 guys win, and go into the season with a much higher ceiling on this wide receiver room.
Yeah, the everybody eats thing is cool and fun and dandy, but maybe it's time to switch it up and get a target hog in here. And that's why I also went with wide receiver, the addition of DJ Moore. So you touched on DJ Moore. You can line up in the slot, line him at the outside. You could do some fun things with him in the backfield, run some routes from there that we saw over the last couple of years. And then Khalil Shakir, listen, I have all respect for Khalil Shakir, but he's not a number 1. And in the last couple of years in Buffalo, he's been forced into being a number 1, and he is not that true target hog. So DJ Moore would open up things for him as well, Kincaid as well. I want to touch on Keon Coleman. I know everyone gets all up in arms about that, but I personally don't have much confidence in Keon Coleman. But if you do, you can look at it like this. Last year, Keon Coleman, other than the 2 healthy scratch games, last year, Keon Coleman, when he was in the field, he was asked to be a top 3 target for the Bills and the staff and company. But now, with DJ Moore addition, Kincaid, Cook involvement in the passing game, he is going to be asked to be a 4th or 5th target option. So top 3, not good. But 4th or 5th or 6th, you can work with that. So in my opinion, he'll benefit from that. Again, I don't have confidence in that playing out, and maybe he will still be traded. But if you do still have some hope and optimism, I guess you could derive it from that perspective as well.
Yeah. I think they're going to use him in different ways. Like you said, one, if he is wide receiver 4 or 5, he's not getting the top corner, the second best corner in some situations.
Yeah.
That can help him out, just that alone. But I think you're going to see times where he gets to play the big slot role where draft analysts said that might be his best area, his best spot in the NFL, and let him use his physicality across the middle. We saw flashes at training camp, that game against Baltimore on the boundaries where he made some pretty big catches along the sidelines, did some good things coming off of a slant late in that game, almost scored a touchdown, which who knows if that would have been good or bad with the amount of time that would have been left in the game with getting the lead there. But he had moments, and the maturity was certainly an issue. But Joe Brady has said since the time he's been hired, I told Keon Coleman it's going to be the best thing for him in his career. Part of me believes that. Now, I'm not sitting here saying this is going to be some monster breakout season because I'm with you. I think he assumes a wide receiver 4, wide receiver, sometimes even 5 role on this roster, but you can create mismatches with that, whether it's on the boundary, in the slot, wherever, because the attention that you're going to have to give DJ Moore and some of these other pass catchers, obviously Khalil Shakir, and if Palmer somehow pans out, whether it's a rookie or Brandon Cooks, if they bring him back, Dalton Kincaid, if those guys are all, your focal points in terms of stopping these guys in the passing game, Keon Coleman can kind of just sit there in the background and maybe make some big plays and kind of carve out a role in that way.
Yeah, and you mentioned Josh Palmer there. For what it's worth, I'm not saying like this guy will bounce back in a huge way, but I'm still moderately optimistic, if that makes sense, for Josh Palmer, because before he came to Buffalo with the ankle thing, first of all, he should have been put in IR way before he was. He was clearly playing hurt. But second of all, his separation metrics, his route running metrics and all that were pretty off the charts before he came to Buffalo last year. So I'm moderately optimistic that can work out as a depth option as well. Ryan, I want to talk about, before we get out of here today, our last big discussion point here, if you would. Bill's top 3 needs right now. Yep. I'll start us off and then we'll go in reverse order. So at number 3, I have defensive end / edge rusher, new terminology in this new defense, whatever, but edge rusher for sake of discussion. So you have Greg Rousseau, who I've maintained and still maintain to this day. I think he's better than a 1B/2 in a general sense, rather than dominant number 1 in terms of pass rush numbers. But for the Bills, he's number 1. And then you have Bradley Chubb. That can't be it, though. Like, you still need other rookies at cost-controlled players. So significant investment, 3-year, $43 million deal, I believe it was. But we know the severe injury history throughout college, throughout Broncos and Miami, right? So how much can you really count on there? And then after that, who knows? Michael Hoyt says he's going to be ready for week 1, but it was a late November against the Chiefs, Achilles tear. When he does come back and healthy, I'm not saying these are the same exact players, but think about it. John Franklin Myers last year, how Jim Leonard used him in terms of lining up inside, outside, and the edge and coverage at different points rather. I think that could be good. And then a player that he couldn't even get a game day jersey, and then when he finally did, he got hurt immediately. Landon Jackson. I don't know where you could count on there. And then Javon Solomon and Andre Jones is a practice squad player, but Javon Solomon is still just a special teams guy. Like, he's been pretty at best when he's been in there as a pass rusher. He's supposed to be speed and bend. I think so. You have a couple power players in Greg Rousseau and Bradley Chubb, but I think you need some young, cost-controlled speed rushers. You have power with those top 2. Now you need speed and bend off the edge.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, that's right up there for me in terms of what their needs are. I kind of said D-line and linebacker, because you're talking about both positions depending on if they're in a 4-3 or a 3-4. And for some of these players, they're going to be moving around a little bit. But I agree. If we're talking about Chubb and Rousseau, there's not much proven depth behind them
No,
in terms of what you're going to get. And when Hoyt does come back, one, there's versatility in terms of how you can use him. But two, truthfully speaking, you usually need a full year coming off the injury to really be the effective player that you once were. And maybe he beats those odds and comes in as effective immediately, but time will tell on that. So that's definitely an area of concern. I agree with that completely. For me, I have, like I said, I had both of those there. I'm going to also say cornerback depth has to be high up on this list. They went out and they signed D. Elford early in free agency to kind of replace Taron Johnson when they are using that nickel cornerback, when they are using three corners on the field. And then you obviously have Max Hairston, who, there are people out there saying he might not be the best fit size-wise for what Jim Leonard wants to do, but you got to give him a shot. I know it's different regime technically because it was for Sean McDermott's defense, but I thought Hairston really did flash when he played last year. That speed, being able to create some interceptions during the season when he was able to come back from an injury. You have in Christian Benford, but then what do you have after that? There's so much uncertainty at that cornerback position where you definitely need to find some depth options. I think post-draft you need to sign at least one veteran. In the draft, I'm anticipating a mid-round pick on a cornerback, not round one like a lot of these draft experts have been doing.
That doesn't make any sense to me, but go ahead.
But they definitely need some depth help there.
Yeah, I think personally, I've been saying this for like a month now. I think it's easy as just bringing back Trey White on a 1-year, $2 million deal, because no one's talking about. He played really well last year for what he was asked to do.
Right.
There's not really a market for Trey White anymore, obviously, after those couple injuries 2 years in a row. So I'm really surprised they haven't brought him back yet. But you're right, they do need depth. It sounds like Dorian Strong, unfortunately, isn't going to be able to play football again. I don't want to assume, but it's not looking good. So. Yeah.
I mean, he just had the surgery. I don't know how long you need to get clearance on something like that, truth be told. Yeah. So even if he's allowed to come back and play football, I don't know if this year is a realistic expectation.
Got to be cautious, yeah.
So it could easily be maybe 2027 if he gets the go-ahead. But you're right. There's a ton of uncertainty there, and that's a shame because he was starting in week 1 last year because of injuries and things like that. And he didn't look out of place in that game against Baltimore, which is a huge testament to him. And he had some really nice moments late in the summer. And up until that injury, he was on track of looking like a great value pick.
He started week 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So where, they had some really nice picks in the middle rounds last year, Deion Walker, Jackson Hawes. And then it felt like Strong was going to be part of that conversation too. And then unfortunately that injury happened.
Yeah. So Ryan, what is your number 2 need for the Bills right now still?
Yeah. I mean, I had D-line, linebacker, cornerback depth. Those are my 3 spots. And we've kind of already talked a little bit about both of the other 2. So I don't want to be too repetitive, but whether you're talking about them being in a 3-4, they definitely need to address that D-line if you're talking it from that perspective. Maybe bring in someone that's more of a true nose tackle. Not that I don't want Deion Walker on the field because he was a difference maker last year as a rookie. But I also feel like you need someone with that prototypical size in the middle. We've heard the Bills talk about needing to be able to stop the run. If they were to stay put at 26, I would even go with a 2-down D lineman like Caden McDonald. I know that the pass rush upside isn't necessarily there, but he is such a dominant force against the run that I would be intrigued by him in round 1. So, and then like we said, linebacker position, whether you're talking about true linebackers or in the 3-4, the case where you're moving Rousseau and Chubb to that linebacker spot, the depth there needs to be addressed. And then, as you said, the starting linebacker room, when you're talking about Bernard and Dorian Williams, you might need some upgrades there as well.
Yeah, so you already touched on all 3 Thanks, by the way. Number 2, I have defensive tackle, and you kind of alluded to it as well. Specifically, a big, huge, literally run-stuffing nose tackle, because they don't really have that projection on this roster, and now especially with this more aggressive defense. You have Ed Oliver, which, side note, I'm very kind of intrigued. I don't know the word intrigued to see how he projects this new style of defense. You have Deanne Walker, who can play some nose tackle, but he still has a lot. He's just an athletic penetrator. He has a lot left to be desired against the run. And then behind them, you have TJ Sanders, which his usage was weird last year. He was like playing on the edge. It was strange. And then Dwayne Carter, who I don't even know if he makes the roster. Even before that Achilles injury his rookie year, he looked out of place. And then you have a few practice squad guys in Phi Mathis, Zion Logue, and Tommy Akingbissote throw in there as well as true practice squad candidates. But after Ed Oliver, I have questions about the projections. I touched on Deanne Walker. I think guys like Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, which Caden McDonald really, I think he's going to go higher. But if he falls to 26, which some people have been alluding to the fact, then I would want a big nose tackle, and that could fit it as well. Number 1, just like you said, I have linebacker. Whether it's Tom Bernard moving to weak side, you need starters, you need depth. I think signing a veteran and then drafting a high rookie like a CJ Allen at 26, like a Jacob Rodriguez in the mid to late 3rd round, trading up even hell in the 2nd round, maybe even. I'm really intrigued to see what happens there. I want to give an honorable mention to wide receiver. I guess you could say it's my quote unquote 4th need, just because you addressed it with DJ Moore. But I would love to get a high end rookie, whether that is at 26 overall. Maybe a Casey Concepcion drops a little, because I mean, after all, he was born in Rochester, so the connection's obvious there. But secondly, I think I've seen some mocks that have him falling out of the 1st round, and I don't believe that at all. I think he's a really fun player. I think he can line up all over the place. You can do some really fun things with him. So yes, you have DJ Moore. Yes, you have Khalil Shakir, but I want a cost-controlled rookie on this team. So quick shout out to wide receiver there.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. And again, I'd be surprised if they went wide receiver round 1. I know they said they're not taking it off the table. I am a big fan of Casey Concepcion. Everything with Jordan Tyson and his projected fall is intriguing to me. I know
I'll take him if he falls.
Right. The hamstring issues might be a concern, but pound for pound in terms of guys on the field, I could argue he's the best receiver in this class. Now, you'd have to feel really good about the hamstring issues that you can kind of manage that, get him on the field. But, those are the 2 guys that I would sit there and say, yeah, at 26, if that's your best player available, if there is no trade down partner, I'm not against it. I do feel like you kind of have to. I shouldn't say you have to, but I feel like there's more need on the defense side of the ball. And if all things are close, you should probably lean on the defense side of the ball. But if they have far and away the best grades, then by all means, go that route.
Yeah, I think the more of the story here, Ryan, is this team has the most needs that they've had in like the last 3 or 4 years. So
yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to, I don't want to say handcuff, but it's going to make Jim Leonard's defense in year 1 probably not what his true vision is. They're going to need
I agree.
2 or 3 seasons to really bring in the types of players that he wants and that really fit his vision for when they can then play more 3-4 defense and get the needs and the players that he truly envisions for this team. So I do feel like this is going to be a really, unique hybrid year in terms of how they play their personnel. And if anyone can figure that out, though, I do feel like it's going to be Jim Leonard.
No, I agree. I'm really excited for the staff. I'm really excited for the new blitz aggressive scheme, mixing in some man in there and so forth and whatnot. So anyway, Ryan, this was a great conversation. Thank you for joining once again. Before we get out of here today, though, I wanted to ask you, and I didn't have this on the show sheet beforehand, so I apologize. So it's okay if you don't have anything, but is there anything that you could please share with us on the top 30 visit / pre-draft visit front for Brandon B and the Buffalo Bills?
It's been really quiet, to be quite honest.
I know. I was going to say, yeah.
Pre-free agency, they hosted about 4 or 5 different players. I do have a tracker at Syracuse.com. And, I don't know if this is a Bills thing, if it's just an agent thing, but it's been pretty radio silent this year, even more than years past, because I do feel like 30 visits were leaked a lot more than, obviously free agency news is a whole different beast. The Bills don't like people knowing who they're talking to, what's on the table. Same with trades, but it feels like this year they're really on lockdown unless the player themselves is announcing it. Or if it's a high enough player, the agent will feed it to, Schefter and Rappaport and guys like that. So it's been unique, though, a very, I don't want to say frustrating, but different than what we've experienced in years past.
Yeah, I think the one eye-popping one that I saw a few weeks ago was Casey Concepcion. I think
Mhm.
everyone that was kind of on the radar, and everyone's really excited about that. But Ryan, thank you for that information. It has been quiet, I agree, but please let everyone know where they can find you and your work and what you have going on this time of year.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Ryan Talbot Bills. You can find my work at Syracuse.com and NYUp.com. This week, I'll probably put out another mock draft. I have the week off, so a good time to do a second mock draft and
Yeah, fire it up.
for any other Bills news that's out there this week.
Yeah, thank you. You can follow me on Twitter/X personally at aWeingartner13. You can follow the show on Twitter at Round Slice. Everyone watching, Run the Slice is, of course, a weekly podcast that you can find on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Aiden. That's Ryan. Thank you for listening or watching today, everyone. See you next time. Goodbye.